The filmmaker saw the footage and couldn't look away. A Bigfoot kneeling at a wooden cross, placing flowers like it understood grief. What she didn't know, 4 nuns vanished at that exact spot in 1984. And the Bigfoot had been mourning them ever since. The creature knelt like it was praying. That's what made the footage impossible to ignore. Not the height, easily 9 feet. Not the dark, matted fur or the massive shoulders. It was the way it bowed its head at the wooden cross, then placed wildflowers at its base with fingers too careful for something that size. Sarah Chen's hand shook as she held her phone steady. 20 feet away, hidden behind a boulder on the Mount Ashford Trail, she barely breathed. Her hiking group had frozen when they heard the low, rumbling sound, somewhere between a groan and a hymn. "Keep recording," her friend Marcus whispered. The creature stayed still for 30 seconds. Then it stood, touched 2 fingers to its forehead, and vanished into the tree line without snapping a single branch. Sarah posted the video at 6 p.m. By midnight, it had 4 million views. By morning, her phone wouldn't stop ringing. Emily Carter was editing footage of a failed dating app documentary when the call came through. She almost didn't answer, unknown number, probably spam. But something made her pick up. Is this Emily Carter? The filmmaker who did that piece on the Riverside disappearances. The voice was rough, older, official. Who's asking? Tom Wardell. I was sheriff of Ashford County back in '84. I need you to see something. Emily leaned back in her chair, skeptical. She'd gotten dozens of conspiracy calls since her documentary premiered. People loved claiming they had the real story behind unsolved cases. Mr. Wardell, I appreciate the call, but 4 nuns went missing from St. Helena Chapel in 1984. He interrupted. We searched for 6 weeks, found nothing. Then the diocese stepped in, told us to stop looking, sealed the files, and declared them runaways. I was ordered to drop it. Emily sat up straighter. That video going around? Wardell continued. The one with the creature and the cross? I know that cross. I put it there myself when we ended the search. It marks the last place we found evidence. A torn habit, blood on the rocks. That thing in the video just put flowers on a memorial for 4 dead women. Emily's pulse quickened. Why are you telling me this? Because in 40 years, nobody's been allowed to ask questions. And now something's mourning them. His voice cracked slightly. I'm 73 years old, Miss Carter. I want the truth out before I die. Those women deserve that much. She closed her laptop. Send me everything you have. 3 days later, Emily stood in the parking lot of the Ashford County Records building, a brown brick structure that looked like it hadn't been updated since the Cold War. The town itself was small. 1 main street, a diner, a church, and a gas station that doubled as the only grocery store. Tom Wardell waited by the entrance, leaning on a cane. He was tall, still broad-shouldered despite his age, with steel-gray hair and eyes that had seen too much. You actually came, he said. I don't ignore good stories. He handed her a worn manila folder. This is everything I kept. Copies, notes, things that didn't make it into the official file before it was sealed. Emily flipped it open. The first page showed 4 photographs. Young women in nuns' habits, smiling. Sister Ruth, Sister Catherine, Sister Margaret, Sister Anne. All in their 20s and 30s. They ran a small retreat center at St. Helena Chapel, Wardell explained. Helped troubled kids, runaways, people who needed somewhere quiet to heal. March 14, 1984, a delivery driver showed up with supplies. Found the chapel empty. Food still warm on the stove. Beds made. No sign of struggle. And you found blood. 2 weeks into the search. Half a mile from the chapel, near a ravine. A piece of Sister Ruth's habit caught on a branch. Blood on the rocks below, but no bodies. We wanted to keep looking, but the church shut us down hard. Said the nuns had personal issues, probably ran off to start new lives. Case closed. Emily studied the photos. You didn't believe that. Those women were devoted. And they weren't alone out there. He pulled out a photocopy of a journal page, the handwriting small and precise. Found this hidden in the chapel basement 3 days before they shut me down. It's from Sister Ruth's journal. Emily read aloud. March 10th, 1984. He came back last night, wounded and frightened. The hunters shot at him again. We cannot let them find him here. He is not what they think. He is gentle, a giant with a child's heart. Sister Catherine says we must protect him, no matter the cost. God brought him to us for a reason. The words hung in the air. Him, Emily repeated. She's talking about something living in those woods. Something people were hunting. Wardell's jaw tightened. The diocese never wanted anyone to read that. They took every journal, every letter, every scrap of evidence that suggested those women were protecting something. Emily looked at the video still she'd printed, the massive figure kneeling at the cross. You think it's the same creature? I think those nuns died protecting it, Wardell said quietly. And I think it's been mourning them ever since. Emily felt the familiar spark, the one that told her she'd just found something real. I need to see that chapel. Wardell nodded slowly. I'll introduce you to Daniel Hayes. He was 18 in '84, volunteered for the search. He's a forest ranger now. Knows those woods better than anyone. He paused. But Miss Carter, people here don't want this reopened. The church, the logging companies, even some locals. They've spent 40 years burying this. Then it's time to dig it up. She didn't know yet how much danger that decision would bring. The library smelled like old paper and secrets. Emily sat at a corner table in the Ashford Public Library, surrounded by microfiche readers and dusty newspaper archives. The librarian, a thin woman named Margaret who'd lived in town her entire life, kept glancing over nervously. You're asking about the nuns, Margaret said quietly, sliding a box of files across the table. People don't talk about them anymore. Why not? Margaret hesitated. Because the ones who did had accidents, lost their jobs, houses burned down. Nothing you could prove, but she lowered her voice. My aunt was a teacher at the retreat center. She told me Sister Ruth kept detailed journals about everything. The kids they helped, donations, daily life. After they vanished, church officials came and took everything. Boxes and boxes. My aunt tried to keep one journal, just as a memory. 2 days later, her car brakes failed on Mountain Road. Emily's stomach tightened. Was she hurt? Broke both legs. She never spoke about the nuns again. Margaret walked away quickly, leaving Emily alone with decades of silence. The newspaper archives told a sanitized story. 4 sisters leave St. Helena retreat. Read the headline from April 1984. The article was brief, clinical, claimed the women had personal reasons for departing suddenly. No mention of searches, no mention of blood. But in the weeks following, Emily found something else. Small articles about wildlife disturbances. Hunters reporting equipment destroyed. Traps found crushed. One hunter hospitalized after claiming something massive attacked him near the chapel grounds. Then, abruptly, those articles stopped too. Emily photographed everything, uploading copies to a secure cloud drive. If someone had silenced this story once, they could try again. Her phone buzzed. Tom Wardell. Meet me at County Records. Back entrance. Come alone. The records building was closed when Emily arrived at dusk, but Wardell stood by the rear door, keys in hand. I still have friends here, he said, unlocking it. We have 20 minutes before security makes rounds. Inside, the basement archive smelled like mildew. Wardell led her past rows of filing cabinets to a locked cage in the corner, the sealed records section. This shouldn't still be here, he muttered, opening it with another key. They usually transfer sealed cases to the diocese after 10 years. But someone filed it wrong, listed it under property disputes instead of missing persons. He pulled out a thick accordion folder marked St. Helena, 1984. Restricted. Emily's hands trembled as she opened it. Inside were incident reports, witness statements, search grid maps, and photographs. Dozens of them. The chapel kitchen with food still on plates. Beds perfectly made. And then the ravine. Blood splattered on rocks. The torn fabric. Boot prints in the mud. Massive, elongated, nothing human. They covered this up, Emily whispered. There's more. Wardell pulled out a sealed envelope. This was in Sister Ruth's desk. I took it before the church officials arrived. Never opened it, seemed wrong. But I kept it all these years. Emily carefully broke the seal. Inside was a letter, dated March 13, 1984, one day before the nuns disappeared. To whoever finds this, if we are gone, know that we chose this. We will not let them kill an innocent soul. The hunters grow bolder. They have guns, traps, poison. They call him a monster, but he saved those children last winter when they were lost in the storm. He carried them through the snow to our door. We owe him protection. The diocese wants us to leave. They fear scandal. But how can we abandon him? He understands prayer. He weeps when we sing. Sister Catherine believes he was once human, cursed or changed by something ancient in these mountains. I do not know. I only know he is alone, frightened, and good. If you find this, please, let him live in peace. Sister Ruth. Emily's throat tightened. These women knew they might die. They weren't victims, she said. They were heroes. Wardell nodded, eyes wet. And nobody ever knew. Suddenly, footsteps echoed above them. Too heavy, too fast. That's not security, Wardell hissed. The basement door slammed open. Two men in dark suits descended the stairs, moving with purpose. Sheriff Wardell, one called. We need you to hand over those files. Wardell shoved the letter into Emily's bag. Go. Now. I'm not leaving. There's a maintenance exit behind the boiler. Go. The men moved faster. Emily ran, clutching her bag, heart pounding. She burst through the maintenance door into an alley as shouts erupted behind her. She didn't stop running until she reached her rental car 3 blocks away. That night, in her motel room, Emily spread everything across the bed. The journal excerpt, the letter, the photographs, the viral video. A pattern emerged. The nuns protected the creature. The church wanted silence. And someone was still willing to threaten people to keep it that way. Her laptop pinged. An email from Wardell. They took the files. But we have copies. Meet Daniel Hayes tomorrow, 8 a.m., Trailhead parking. He'll take you to the chapel. Be careful. They're watching now. Emily stared at the photograph of the creature kneeling at the cross, placing flowers with impossible gentleness. What are you? She whispered. Outside her window, in the darkness beyond the motel parking lot, something massive moved between the trees. Then it was gone. Daniel Hayes looked nothing like Emily expected. He was in his late 50s, weathered and quiet, with the kind of steady presence that came from decades in the wilderness. When Emily arrived at the trailhead, he was checking supplies, water, first aid kit, flares. Tom said you're serious about this, Daniel said, not looking up. I am. The chapel's 5 miles in.
Steep terrain.
We lose light in 4 hours. He finally met her eyes. And if we see anything unusual, we leave immediately.
No arguments.
What counts as unusual? Daniel's expression darkened. You'll know. The forest grew denser as they climbed. Ancient pines blocked most of the sunlight, casting everything in permanent twilight. Emily noticed scratch marks on several trees, deep gouges, too high for bears. Those have been there since I was a kid, Daniel said, following her gaze. We used to think loggers did it. Then I saw him make 1 inch. Emily stopped walking. You've seen the creature. Twice. Once during the search in '84. Just a shadow moving through the trees, but big enough to make the ground shake. Second time was 3 years ago. I was tracking a lost hiker near the old chapel. Found the hiker safe, sleeping by a fire someone had built for her. She said a giant man covered in fur had found her, carried her to shelter, and kept her warm until morning. Did you believe her? I went back the next day. Found footprints. 30 inches long. 6 toes. Daniel adjusted his pack. I stopped asking what to believe after that. They walked in silence until the trees opened into a clearing. The chapel ruins stood like a broken tooth against the sky. Stone walls remained mostly intact, but the roof had collapsed decades ago. Wooden beams jutted out at angles, covered in moss and ivy. A makeshift cross stood near the entrance, the same one from the viral video. Fresh wildflowers lay at its base. Emily's skin prickled. Those weren't here in the video. He comes back, Daniel said quietly. Every few weeks. Sometimes he leaves flowers. Sometimes he just kneels there for hours. They approached carefully. Emily photographed everything, the flowers, the cross, the crumbling walls. Inside the chapel, nature had reclaimed most of the space. Vines snaked through broken windows. Birds nested in the rafters. But something else caught her attention. On the stone floor, barely visible under decades of dirt and leaves, were scratches. Deliberate marks carved into the rock. Emily knelt, brushing away debris with her hand. The symbols emerged slowly, crude but unmistakable. Crosses, praying hands, words in Latin. Protegeum, Emily read aloud. Protect him. Daniel crouched beside her. The nuns carved these. Emily's chest tightened. She imagined the 4 women here, knowing they might die, scratching prayers into stone as their final testimony. She uncovered more symbols. A circle with rays, a fish, a crude drawing of something large and human-shaped surrounded by smaller figures. They left a record, she whispered. They wanted someone to know. She kept digging, pulling away layers of rotted leaves near the altar. Her fingers hit something hard. Metal. A broken rosary. The beads were hand-carved wood, worn smooth. The crucifix was bent but intact. Emily held it carefully, and something inside her knew. This had belonged to one of the nuns. Daniel, she said, we need to document all of. The ground trembled. Not an earthquake. Something else. Rhythmic. Heavy. Footsteps. Daniel grabbed her arm. We need to go. Now. The trembling grew stronger. Dust fell from the remaining chapel walls. Emily shoved the rosary in her pocket and stood, heart hammering. From somewhere in the forest, close, too close, came a sound that froze her blood. Crying. Not animal. Not quite human. A deep, mournful sobbing that echoed through the trees like a funeral dirge. Move! Daniel pulled her toward the exit. They ran into the clearing just as something massive circled the chapel perimeter. Emily caught glimpses through the trees. A towering silhouette, moving with impossible silence for something that size. The crying continued, growing louder, more desperate. Daniel threw a flare into the air. It burst with white light, illuminating the forest. For 1 second, Emily saw it clearly. 9 feet tall, covered in dark fur matted with leaves and mud. Arms too long, shoulders impossibly broad. But the face was almost human. Anguished, lost. It clutched something against its chest. Another rosary, larger, worn like a bracelet around its massive wrist. Their eyes met. Emily felt recognition pass between them, not threat, but grief. This creature wasn't stalking them. It was mourning. Then the flare died, plunging everything into darkness. Run! Daniel shouted. They crashed through the underbrush, branches tearing at their clothes. The footsteps followed, heavy and deliberate, circling rather than chasing. The sobbing turned to something else, a low, rhythmic sound. Chanting. Latin words Emily recognized from old hymns. It's praying, she gasped as they ran. I know, Daniel said. It always does. They didn't stop until they reached the trailhead, lungs burning, legs shaking. Emily collapsed against her car, fumbling for her keys. Behind them, deep in the forest, the chanting faded to silence. Daniel's hands trembled as he caught his breath. In '84, we heard that same sound during the searches. We thought it was the wind. Emily pulled the broken rosary from her pocket. The wooden beads gleamed in the fading light. It wasn't the wind, she said. It was him. He's been praying for them for 40 years. The town hall meeting room was packed. Emily slipped into the back row, notebook in hand, as a man in an expensive suit stood at the podium. Behind him, A presentation screen showed maps of the forest marked in bright red. Cascade Timber Corporation is proud to bring 300 new jobs to Ashford County, the man announced. His name tag read Richard Voss, Regional Director. Our sustainable forestry initiative will clear-cut 4,000 acres over the next 6 months, providing economic growth this community desperately needs. The map showed exact coordinates. Emily's stomach dropped when she recognized the area. The chapel ruins sat directly in the center of the red zone. A few people applauded. Most sat silent, uncomfortable. An older woman stood up. That's protected watershed. You can't just... The environmental permits are approved. Voss interrupted smoothly. We've worked closely with county officials to ensure full compliance. Crews begin next Monday. Emily raised her hand. What about the recent wildlife sighting? The viral video shows potential endangered species activity in that exact area. The room buzzed with whispers. Voss's smile tightened. Ah yes, the Bigfoot video. He clicked to a new slide showing a blurry still from Sarah Chen's footage. Our wildlife consultants have reviewed this extensively. It's either a hoax, likely someone in a costume trying to block development, or a misidentified bear. Either way, it doesn't meet the threshold for halting a multi-million-dollar project. That's not a bear, someone muttered. Voss's expression hardened. Let me be clear. Cascade Timber has invested significant resources here. We have contracts, permits, and legal authority. Anyone attempting to interfere with our operations will face legal consequences and potential criminal charges for trespassing. His eyes found Emily in the crowd. The message was unmistakable. After the meeting, Emily stood outside, filming a summary for her documentary notes, when a logging truck rumbled past. Workers in hard hats stared at her from the cab, their expressions hostile. You're the filmmaker, a voice said. Emily turned. A young woman in coveralls approached, mid-20s, tired eyes, Cascade Timber logo on her jacket. Jenna Moss. She introduced herself. I'm a surveyor for Cascade. I need to tell you something, but not here. They walked to the diner 2 blocks away. Inside a corner booth, Jenna ordered coffee with shaking hands. I was part of the advanced survey team, she said quietly. We went into that forest 3 weeks ago to mark cutting boundaries. We found things. What things? Structures. Woven branches formed into shelters. Rock arrangements that couldn't be natural. And carved symbols on trees. Same symbols you posted photos of from the chapel floor. Jenna pulled out her phone, showing Emily pictures. I documented everything. Showed my supervisor. He told me to delete the files and forget what I saw. Emily's pulse quickened. Did you delete them?
No.
But 2 days later, someone broke into my apartment. Took my laptop, my backup drive. Only things missing. Jenna's voice cracked. They're destroying evidence before the cutting starts. Whatever's in those woods, Cascade knows it's real, and they want it gone. Why are you telling me this? Jenna met her eyes. Because my grandmother worked at St. Helena Retreat in the 70s. She told me stories about something in the forest, something gentle that helped lost children. She said the nuns protected it, and when they disappeared, the town sold its soul by staying silent. She pushed the phone across the table. I sent you my survey photos. Use them. Someone has to tell the truth. Emily grabbed her hand. Thank you. Be careful. Voss isn't just a corporate director. People say he has connections, the kind that make problems disappear. Back at her motel, Emily uploaded Jenna's photos and everything she gathered to 3 separate cloud accounts. The evidence was mounting. The nuns died protecting the creature. The church buried the truth. And now Cascade Timber wanted to eliminate any trace that remained. Her phone rang. Tom Wardell. Turn on the news, he said. Emily grabbed the remote. The local station showed footage of the forest, then cut to an interview with Richard Voss standing at a logging site. Ridiculous claims about supernatural creatures are exactly the kind of anti-development extremism that hurts working families. Voss was saying. The so-called evidence this filmmaker is spreading is fabricated. We have security footage proving activists in costumes have been staging sightings to create false controversy. That's a lie, Emily shouted at the screen. The broadcast cut to a shaky video, clearly manipulated, showing someone in a cheap gorilla suit near the forest. The news anchor's voice was skeptical but damaging. Questions grow about the authenticity of recent Bigfoot claims as logging companies prepare to begin operations. Emily's hands clenched into fists. They were discrediting her before she could even present her findings. Her laptop pinged. An email from an anonymous account. Stop investigating or face consequences. This is your only warning. Attached was a photo of Emily leaving the records building 3 nights ago. Someone had been watching from the beginning. Emily stared at her files, the journals, the photos, the testimonies. She had 48 hours before the cutting began. 48 hours to prove the creature existed and deserved protection. And someone powerful was determined to stop her. She pulled up Daniel's number. I need to go back to the forest. Tonight. Emily, that's dangerous. If I don't get proof now, that creature dies and the truth dies with it. Are you with me? Silence. Then, I'll meet you at the trailhead at midnight. Bring cameras. Emily looked at the viral video still, the creature kneeling, grieving, praying. Hold on, she whispered. I'm coming. The forest at midnight was a different world. Emily and Daniel moved through darkness so thick her flashlight barely penetrated 10 feet ahead. Every sound felt amplified. Branches snapping, wind hissing through leaves, the distant call of an owl. Daniel had insisted on bringing proper equipment. Motion sensor cameras, audio recorders, night vision scopes. They set up a perimeter near the river, half a mile from the chapel ruins where the creature had been sighted most frequently. If he follows patterns, he'll come through here to reach the memorial cross, Daniel whispered, checking the camera angles. He usually appears between midnight and 3 a.m. Emily positioned her main camera on a tripod, hands trembling with cold and adrenaline. What if he doesn't show? Then we try again tomorrow, and the day after, until... He stopped, held up his hand. Emily heard it too. Water splashing in the river, but not like an animal drinking, like something wading through it with slow, deliberate steps. She switched on the night vision camera. The screen glowed green. Across the river, a massive shape emerged from the tree line. Emily's breath caught. The creature stood at the water's edge, moonlight casting silver highlights across its dark fur. It was larger than she remembered, easily 9 feet, shoulders broad enough to snap a man in half. But it moved with heartbreaking gentleness. It knelt at the riverbank and cupped water in its enormous hands, drinking slowly. Then it reached down and picked up smooth river stones, examining each one carefully before placing them in a small pile. What's it doing? Emily breathed. Daniel's voice was barely audible. I don't know. I've never seen this. The creature arranged the stones in a pattern, a cross. Then it sat back, bowed its head, and began to make sounds. Not growls, not roars. Words. Latin words, broken and mispronounced, but unmistakable. The rhythm was familiar, a prayer Emily had heard at funerals. Requiem aeternam. The creature's voice was deep, mournful, struggling with each syllable. Donius. Eternal rest grant unto them. Emily translated, tears streaming down her face. It's praying the requiem. For the nuns. The creature reached up and touched something around its wrist. The rosary Emily had seen before. It brought the beads to its forehead, then to its chest, mimicking the sign of the cross with heartbreaking precision. Daniel's hand gripped Emily's shoulder. He learned this from them. They taught him. The creature stood and waded into the river, water rising to its waist. It continued the prayer, each word a struggle, each sound carrying decades of grief. When it reached the middle of the river, directly across from their hiding spot, it stopped, turned and looked straight at them. Emily froze. The night vision showed its face clearly, broad and heavy-boned, but the eyes were painfully human, intelligent, aware, sad beyond measure. It raised one massive hand, not threatening, a gesture of acknowledgement. Then it pulled the rosary from its wrist and held it up, letting it catch the moonlight. The wooden beads were carved with tiny crosses, handmade, given with love. "Sister Catherine's rosary," Emily whispered. She gave it to him. The creature pressed the rosary to its heart and made a sound that shattered Emily. A sob so deep and raw it seemed to come from the earth itself. It knew they were watching. It wanted them to see. Suddenly, without warning, something else happened. A blinding light erupted from the forest behind the creature, white and searing, like 1,000 camera flashes at once. Emily and Daniel threw their hands up, the cameras sparking and shorting out from the intensity. Emily heard the creature roar, not in rage but in pain or fear, and the sound of massive footsteps crashing through the underbrush. "What's happening?" she shouted. The light pulsed again, brighter, and a wave of force knocked them both to the ground. Emily's head cracked against a rock. Vision swimming, she saw shapes moving in the forest, human shapes carrying equipment. Not natural light. Spotlights. Industrial strength. "Someone's here." Daniel grabbed her arm. "We have to move." But Emily's hand found her backup camera, a small handheld she'd kept in her jacket. Still working. She raised it, filming blindly as her vision cleared. Through the viewfinder, she saw the creature across the river, shielding its eyes from the spotlights. Men shouted in the distance. The creature turned, confused and terrified, still clutching the rosary. Then it ran. Emily now. Daniel pulled her to her feet. They stumbled through the forest, following a different path than the creature. Behind them, voices echoed, coordinated, professional. A search team. They collapsed behind a fallen log a quarter-mile away, gasping for breath. Emily checked her backup camera with shaking hands. The footage was shaky, partially overexposed, but intact. She had recorded everything: the prayer, the rosary, the creature's humanity. "Who were they?" she panted. Daniel's face was grim. "Cascade's security. Maybe worse. They were tracking us." Emily's equipment bag vibrated. She pulled out her phone. Dozens of missed calls, all from blocked numbers. Then a text from an unknown sender. "You were warned. Leave Ashford tonight or you won't leave at all." Another text appeared, this one with an attached photo. Emily's motel room, completely trashed. Files scattered. Her laptop smashed. "They were there while we were here," she whispered. Daniel stood, scanning the dark forest. "We can't go back to town. They'll be waiting." "Then where?" "I know a place. My cabin, 20 miles north." Off-grid, he helped her up. "But Emily, we just became targets." Daniel's cabin was barely more than a hunting shack. One room, a wood stove, no cell service. They arrived at dawn, exhausted and paranoid, checking constantly for headlights following them on the mountain road. Emily immediately uploaded her backup footage to the cloud using Daniel's satellite internet connection. The video was damaged, the bright lights had corrupted sections, but the audio was perfect. The creature's Latin prayers, the sobs, the evidence of its humanity. "This changes everything," she said, watching the footage loop. "This proves they knew. The nuns taught him language, religion. He's not just intelligent. He's been living with their memory for 40 years. Daniel made coffee with shaking hands. "It also proves people will kill to keep this buried." Emily's phone, kept off until now, buzzed with a backlog of messages when she powered it on. Most were from reporters wanting interviews about the fake Bigfoot hoax. Several were from Tom Wardell. The last one made her blood run cold. "Emily, don't come back to town. They came to my house asking questions. I told them nothing, but be careful. These aren't just corporate thugs." "Tom." She called him immediately. It rang 4 times before he answered. "Tom, what happened?" "2 men. Suits, no badges, but they moved like government." His voice was tight. "They said I was interfering with federal land use permits by spreading misinformation, threatened to revoke my pension if I kept talking to journalists." "Federal? This is about logging permits." "That's what I thought. Until they mentioned the diocese." Tom paused. "Emily, this goes deeper than Cascade Timber. The church has been protecting this secret for decades. If the creature's existence is proven, questions start getting asked. Where did it come from? Why did 4 nuns die? What else has the church been hiding? Emily's mind raced. They're not just protecting corporate interests. They're protecting institutional reputation. And they have the resources to make problems disappear. After hanging up, Emily tried to check her other cloud backups. 2 accounts had been deleted entirely, everything gone. The third was still active, protected by layers of encryption, but someone had tried to access it 17 times in the past hour. They're coming for the evidence, she said. Daniel looked up from the window where he'd been watching the road. Then we need to go public. Now, before they can stop us. With what? Corrupted footage and a story nobody believes. Emily slumped in her chair. Voss already discredited us. Even if I release this, they'll call it manipulated AI, fake audio, anything. So what do? Emily stared at the backup camera. An idea formed, dangerous, probably insane, but possibly their only chance. We need someone who was there. Someone who can testify to the truth. She met Daniel's eyes. We need to talk to someone from the church who knew those nuns. Daniel made calls using his satellite phone while Emily reviewed her files. By noon, he had a name. Father Joseph Brennan, retired priest, now living in a care facility in the next county. He'd served at St. Helena Chapel in the early 1980s before being transferred suddenly, right before the nuns disappeared. They drove to Evergreen Care Home that afternoon, paranoid and watchful. The facility was small, quiet, nestled among pine trees. Father Brennan was 86, frail, sitting in a wheelchair by a window overlooking a garden. When Emily explained why they'd come, his watery eyes filled with tears. I wondered when someone would finally ask, he said quietly. I've carried this for 40 years. Emily set up her camera. Tell me what happened. The old priest's hands trembled. The sisters called him Adam. Like the first man, innocent and alone. He appeared in the winter of 1981, half-frozen, wounded by hunters' traps. Sister Ruth found him collapsed near the chapel. They nursed him back to health. What was he? I don't know. Something ancient, perhaps. Or cursed. He was intelligent. Learned to understand us within months. The sisters taught him prayers, showed him kindness. He helped them in return. Carried firewood, repaired the roof, watched over the children who came to the retreat. Father Brennan's voice cracked. But people in town heard rumors. Saw tracks. The hunters wanted a trophy. The diocese wanted to avoid scandal. I was ordered to convince the sisters to leave, to abandon him. But they refused, Emily said. Sister Ruth told me, Father, we cannot condemn an innocent soul to death. If protecting him means our lives, then God's will be done. Tears rolled down his weathered cheeks. I reported their refusal to my superiors. 3 days later, the sisters were gone. The diocese sealed everything, transferred me to another state, made me sign papers swearing silence. You think the church ordered their deaths?
No.
I think the sisters sacrificed themselves willingly. He looked directly at the camera. On March 13th, hunters came with dogs and rifles. I saw them heading toward the chapel. I tried to warn the sisters, but when I arrived, they were leading Adam deep into the forest. Away from the chapel, away from the hunters. Sister Ruth told me to go back, to stay safe. That was the last time I saw them alive. Emily's throat tightened. They led him away to protect him. And the hunters found the sisters instead. Father Brennan closed his eyes. The diocese discovered the bodies before authorities arrived. For women, dead from exposure and injuries sustained in the ravine. But Adam was gone, saved. The church couldn't explain why nuns died protecting a creature, so they created a different story. Runaways, personal issues, lies. Why didn't you speak up? Because I was a coward, his voice broke. And I've regretted it every day since. Daniel's phone buzzed. A text from a blocked number. He showed Emily the screen. We know where you are. Last chance. Drop this. Attached was a photo taken minutes ago. their car in the care home parking lot. Emily's hands clenched. They're watching us right now. Father Brennan gripped her wrist with surprising strength. Then finish this. Tell the truth I was too afraid to tell. Those women were saints. Emily grabbed her equipment. We need to move. As they rushed to the car, Emily saw it. A black SUV parked across the street, windows tinted, engine running. Waiting. They lost the SUV on a series of back roads. Daniel driving like he knew every curve and turnoff by heart. But Emily knew they were running out of time and options. We need definitive proof, she said, clutching Sister Ruth's journal excerpt. Something they can't discredit or destroy. Daniel glanced at her. There might be one place we haven't checked. In Ruth's journal, the entry you showed me. She mentioned the place where prayers echo. I always thought it was metaphorical. But what? There's a cave system behind Seraphim Falls, about 2 miles past the chapel. Local legend says if you speak inside, the sound bounces for minutes. The nuns used to take troubled kids there for meditation retreats. He turned onto a dirt road. If they were hiding Adam somewhere safe, somewhere meaningful, that would be it. Emily pulled out the journal excerpt, reading it again with new understanding. We brought him to the place where prayers echo. He feels safe there, surrounded by stone and water. He calls it sanctuary. How do we find it? The falls are marked on old trail maps. The cave entrance is hidden behind the waterfall itself. Daniel's jaw set with determination. But we're going in daylight this time. And we're documenting everything. They hiked in silence, hyper-aware of every sound. The forest felt different now, watching, waiting. Emily half expected men with guns to emerge from the trees at any moment. Seraphim Falls appeared after an hour of steep climbing. A 60-foot cascade of white water pouring over black rocks. The roar was deafening. Daniel pointed to a narrow ledge behind the waterfall. There. We have to climb around. The rocks were slick with spray. Emily's heart hammered as she edged along the cliff face. Waterfall mist soaking her clothes. One slip meant a deadly fall. Then she saw it. A dark opening in the rock face, just wide enough for a person to enter. Or something larger. Inside, the cave opened into a vast chamber. Light filtered through cracks in the ceiling, illuminating something impossible. A sanctuary. Dozens of candles stood in alcoves carved into the stone walls, melted to stubs but carefully placed. Hand-stitched cloth hung like tapestries, faded but intact, embroidered with crosses and prayers. River stones arranged in circular patterns covered the floor, and in the center a memorial. For names carved into a flat stone, the letters deep and deliberate. Ruth, Catherine, Margaret, and fresh wildflowers lay across the stone. "Oh my God," Emily whispered, her voice echoing through the chamber. She set up her camera with trembling hands, filming everything. Daniel knelt by the memorial, touching the carved letters. He made this. He's been maintaining it for 40 years. Emily moved deeper into the cave, finding more evidence of habitation. Woven bedding made from moss and bark, meticulously constructed. A collection of objects arranged on a natural stone shelf. More rosaries, a small wooden cross, a faded photograph in a cracked frame. Emily lifted the frame carefully. The photo showed the 4 nuns standing in front of St. Helena Chapel, smiling. Beside them, partially visible in the shadow of the building, was a massive figure, blurred but unmistakable. "They took a picture with him," she breathed. "They weren't afraid. They were family." A sound echoed from deeper in the cave. Low, rhythmic breathing. Daniel grabbed her arm. "He's here." Emily's instinct screamed to run, but she forced herself to stay calm. "Wait, if he wanted to hurt us, he would have done it already." She raised her voice, letting it echo through the chamber. "We know what happened. We know what they did for you. We want to help." Silence. Then footsteps, slow, cautious, approaching from a dark tunnel at the rear of the cave. The creature emerged into the light. This close, Emily saw details the videos had missed. Scars crisscrossed its arms and chest, old wounds from traps and bullets. Its fur was graying around the face. But the eyes were unmistakably aware, watching them with careful intelligence. It clutched a rosary in one hand and something else in the other, a small wooden figure, hand-carved. The creature knelt slowly, never breaking eye contact. It set the wooden figure on the ground and pushed it toward Emily with one massive finger. Then it bowed its head and waited. Emily approached carefully, picking up the carving. It was a small statue of a praying nun, crafted with painstaking detail despite the crude tools that must have made it. The face was gentle, serene. "Sister Ruth," Emily whispered. The creature made a sound, not words, but a deep hum of acknowledgement. It pointed to the memorial stone, then to its chest, then to the sky. "They're gone," Emily said, tears streaming. "But we remember them. We know what they did." The creature's eyes glistened. It reached up and touched its own face, tracing the path of tears it couldn't shed. Then it did something that shattered Emily's heart. It took her hand, gently, so gently, and placed it against the memorial stone. Then it placed its own massive hand over hers. Shared grief, shared loss, shared love for the 4 women who'd given everything. Daniel filmed everything, his own face wet with tears. The creature stood, towering over them, and made the sign of the cross. Perfectly executed, learned from the sisters decades ago. Then it gestured toward the cave entrance. "A warning. Danger coming." "We know," Emily said. "They're trying to destroy the forest. Destroy this place. Destroy you." The creature's expression shifted, not fear, but resignation. It had survived 40 years of hiding. It was tired. Emily gripped the wooden statue.
No.
"Not this time. This time, the world will know the truth." The creature tilted its head, uncertain. "Trust me," Emily said, "the way you trusted them." For a long moment, the creature simply looked at her. Then it reached into a crevice and pulled out something wrapped in old, rotted cloth. Sister Ruth's journal, the complete one. It placed the book in Emily's hands and stepped back. "Permission, testimony, truth." "Thank you," Emily whispered. The creature bowed its head one final time, then retreated into the shadows of the cave. But Emily knew what she had to do. The bulldozers arrived at dawn. Emily stood in the parking lot of the Ashford Community Center, uploading files with shaking hands. She'd worked through the night, editing footage, scanning journal pages, compiling 40 years of buried truth into one undeniable document. Daniel had helped her set up a live stream. No corporations to control it, no officials to shut it down. Direct to the public. Global. Unstoppable. At 6:47 a.m., she went live. "My name is Emily Carter. What I'm about to show you will challenge everything you think you know about the 4 nuns who disappeared from St. Helena Chapel in 1984. Within minutes, she had 10,000 viewers. Then 50,000. She showed Father Brennan's testimony. Sister Ruth's complete journal describing Adam's gentleness, his intelligence, his grief. The cave sanctuary, the memorial stone, the carved statue of a praying nun. And finally, the footage from the river. The creature praying in broken Latin, clutching a rosary, mourning the women who'd saved his life. "These nuns didn't run away," Emily said to the camera, voice steady despite her fear. "They sacrificed themselves to protect an innocent being from people who wanted to kill him for being different. And for 40 years, powerful institutions buried that truth to avoid scandal and profit." The viewer count hit 500,000. Comments flooded in: shock, disbelief, anger, support. Then chaos erupted outside. Cascade timber crews had already started cutting trees at the forest perimeter when word of the livestream reached them. Richard Voss arrived in a convoy of trucks, security teams flanking him. "Shut down those cameras," he shouted at his men. But townspeople were gathering now, dozens, then hundreds. They'd been watching the stream. Some came with signs, "Protect St. Helena Forest." Others came with cameras of their own, documenting everything. Voss's security team tried to push through the crowd, but Daniel stepped forward, placing himself between them and Emily's broadcast equipment. "You'll have to go through all of us," he said quietly. Tom Wardell appeared, leaning on his cane, flanked by other retired officers. "She has a right to speak." Jenna Moss, the surveyor, stood with a group of Cascade workers who'd refused to start cutting. "We're not destroying a sanctuary for profit." Voss's face reddened. "This is private property with legal permits." "Built on lies," Emily interrupted, still broadcasting. "You knew something lived in that forest. Your surveys documented it. You planned to bury the evidence with the trees." The livestream viewers hit 2 million. Then something happened that stopped everyone cold. The ground trembled. Not an earthquake, footsteps. From the tree line, moving with slow deliberation, the creature emerged. People screamed. Some ran. Others raised phones, filming frantically. The creature stood at the forest edge, 9 feet of living myth made real. Behind it, morning light filtered through ancient pines. The forest it had called home for decades. Voss's security guards drew weapons. "Stand down." Wardell's voice cracked like a whip. "Nobody fires." The creature didn't advance. It simply stood there, looking at the bulldozers, the crowd, the cameras broadcasting its existence to the world. Then it knelt. In front of millions of witnesses, it bowed its head and made the sign of the cross. Perfect, practiced, taught by 4 women who'd loved it enough to die. Emily's camera captured everything. "His name is Adam," she said into the microphone, voice breaking. "And he's been mourning the nuns who saved him for 40 years. This forest isn't just trees. It's his home, his sanctuary, their legacy." The crowd fell silent. Even Voss's security team lowered their weapons, staring in awe. The creature reached into the fur at its chest and pulled out a rosary. Sister Catherine's rosary. It held it up for everyone to see, then placed it gently on the ground between itself and the bulldozers. An offering, a plea, prayer. Emily walked forward slowly, hands raised to show she meant no harm. The creature watched her approach, eyes reflecting decades of solitude and grief. She knelt beside the rosary and looked up at him. "They're watching," she said softly. "The whole world is watching. You're not alone anymore." The creature made a sound, low, mournful, but somehow hopeful. Then it turned and walked back into the forest. Not fleeing, not hiding, simply returning home. Because now the world knew, and the world was watching. 3 months later, the St. Helena Forest Reserve was officially designated a protected sanctuary by federal order. Public pressure, fueled by Emily's documentary, which had been viewed 50 million times, forced the government to act. Cascade Timber's permits were revoked. The land was declared untouchable. The chapel ruins became a memorial site. People came from around the world to leave flowers at the wooden cross, to pray, to remember 4 women who'd chosen compassion over fear. Emily stood at the memorial on a cool October morning, placing wildflowers among dozens of others. Carved into the restored chapel wall was a bronze plaque, in memory of Sister Ruth, Sister Catherine, Sister Margaret, and Sister and, who taught us that love and protection know no boundaries. She heard movement in the trees behind her, a familiar heavy tread. Emily didn't turn around. She simply smiled. "I brought fresh flowers," she said. "The kind you like." A low, gentle hum answered her. Acknowledgement, gratitude. The creature knelt beside her, as it did every week now without hiding, and placed its own bundle of wildflowers at the cross. Together, they prayed for the women who'd shown that true holiness meant protecting the vulnerable, even when the vulnerable stood 9 feet tall and lived in the shadows. Especially then, the world had finally learned what the 4 nuns of St. Helena had always known. Monsters are made by fear, but sanctuaries are built by love.